Alrighty, let's talk about Twin Peaks Season 3 and whether or not it was a success or failure as a standalone season and as well as an addition to the previous Twin Peaks material. And overall, I mean, just a long story short, I will say that season 3 is succeeds more than it fails, as far as what we were given by Lynch and Company. I mean, it's 18 episodes of Twin Peaks, and Lynch, committing, to a creative endeavor like this, which, for him, he's not like a extremely prolific filmmaker. I mean, or TV director, producer. Takes quite a bit of time between his film releases, at least in the past. So it's been a while since he's done a feature film. So it was nice to see this creative endeavor see the light of day, and to get 18 episodes of material, both fully in his creative control and devoted to a series that so many of us love. So yeah, I mean, overall, I think it was, regardless of how the season ended and what changes or modifications or contradictions may have occurred when it comes to the lore, I think that season 3 ultimately succeeded. Though I think it definitely could have been improved upon in a few different ways, and I think part of it is with Lynch and how he creates his his cinematic pieces, or does things in his style and with his methodology and philosophy. You're never going to get a cut and dry answer, everything wrapped up, nice, pretty package. Typically, that's just not how he does things, and this is a plus and a minus. It's a positive and a negative when it comes to the story overall, because for something like this, which has been over 25 years since we've finished season 2. There's been a lot of questions that have been, deserve to be, answered, or at least we be given enough information to, extrapolate, potential answer that, has enough evidence to back it up, and, could be conclusive when it comes to, things like the Black Lodge, and the entity known as Bob, and now Laura Palmer as the entity known as Laura Palmer as well. So in that regard, it's kind of Lynch's, not wanting to be a director that tells a kind of a classical narrative, in the Hollywood sense. It's almost like he would have to compromise his artistic vision and spoon feed us, even the slightest bit of information. It seemed like it would probably something that he would not be in favor of, even though it might have helped the story overall. We, of course, were left with an ending that could be interpreted multiple ways, which to his credit, will keep people like myself guessing what it all means, for many years to come, and make the show relevant as far as that goes. So it succeeded in that regard, but he also, I think, kind of opened up some new avenues of inquiry that may contradict what we've previously been told about the supernatural elements, and the paranormal elements that we've been introduced to in the past. And I'll try to, like I said, I plan on taking the time to try to compile a enough information from the show, and I'll probably try to get a hold of some of the books that were the supplementary material to the movie and the first 2 seasons, and do some research and try to make sense of as much of what I can as far as the supernatural elements, the Black Lodge, the White Lodge, Bob. Now this entity known as Judy, or and so on and so forth, and try and answer some of my own questions that I have about what certain things meant. But and that being said, when it comes to a Lynch project, you're ultimately never going to be given a 100% conclusive answer that will stand up to all scrutiny. So which is in a way nice, because that gives us some way to use our imagination to interpret as we will. But at the same point, it would be nice to have had some more concrete answers than Lynch merely kind of going, making it more dream and metaphor and symbolism, and not something completely concrete when it comes to how especially the last couple episodes. There's a lot there that makes you scratch your head. But stylistically, moving on to another aspect of it. It's Twin Peaks TV, CBS, in the late 80s, early 90s, compared to now, it's 2 different animals. So the quaintness and the quirkiness of Twin Peaks, is something that's kind of hard to replicate without it just seeming like fan service and kind of nostalgia. So in that regard, I think it was good that we had an R rating or whatever. I'm assuming what Showtime has for its programming, at least for certain episodes, because it is a dark world. I mean, the notions of the lodge and these entities. I mean, it is a very dark psychologically and spiritually. So it's nice to have some of those limitations removed, so that that can delve into these kind of more I guess darker realms of the human psyche and whatnot, through the depiction of violence and sex at certain times, even though it didn't necessarily add a lot to it, but so I think that Lynch definitely had, in that regard, had a little bit more freedom. But on the other hand, when you are limited by a rating, like you would on a regular network, you have to be equally clever when it comes to creating the story without having some of those more visceral images and visceral depictions at your disposal, and you have to basically use dialogue and inference to things, and sometimes in that case it can actually benefit, because I mean what happened in the first 2 seasons, especially to Laura Palmer, and it's pretty brutal stuff, but it was it was on a network where for the most part you could have your teenagers or whatever, younger adolescents, at least for most of it, could watch the show, and other than a few kind of disturbing scenes of violence, wouldn't be something completely shocking. But yeah, stylistically it's a bit different, but it's 26 years later on, so the stylistic continuity with the original was probably not going to happen. Even though that it's Lynch and the way he directs the actors and everything, you still get that vibe from him, so you still know it's a Lynch project. It's pretty, his creative stamp is all over it when it comes to how, the cinematography, the sound, production, like I said, the way the actors act and play the roles, the awkward silences and, awkward kind of quirky moments. They, it'd probably get some people, annoyed or scratching their heads and wondering what the heck's going on. But you just, if you're a fan of Lynch and you watched his films and whatnot, you're kind of you're used to that rhythm and that kind of flow of the narrative, and it's it doesn't really stand out, like, and kind of disrupt your ability to enjoy the story. Let's see. There's not, I don't want to delve too much into the overall story, because I mean, as far as what elements were new and what elements were continuations from the previous episodes of the show and whatnot, and because I want to do, like I said, one big kind of project on all of that. But obviously we departed quite a bit from what had taken place in the original 2 seasons. I mean, we had the setup of Cooper in the lodge after failing to pass the test of the Black Lodge, and then we had some after where are they now type of stuff that as far as like people that lived in Twin Peaks still, Andy and Lucy and Hawk and and some of the other people that lived in Twin Peaks. We got kind of a continuation of some of their stories, but for the most part, most of the stuff that happened in in Twin Peaks proper, other than related directly to the supernatural events that were going on, which typically revolved around Sheriff Frank Truman with Hawk, and then Bobby Briggs to an extent, and then with reference to his dad, it was kind of so. I mean, I don't really see much of the point of really spending much time on Shelley or her daughter and her daughter's issues with her crazy husband, and some of that, it's almost like they dwelled too much on some of the side stuff at Twin Peaks, just like they wanted to have the nostalgia factor of certain characters. It's like Jerry Horn is kind of funny for a while, that he was kind of tripping out because he was smoking weed all the time now, but it was, like I said, or Ben Horn and his secretary, and like I said, Shelley and Norma and Dr. Jacoby and Nadine. Some one little stint of on some of the episodes. Like Dr. Jacoby is Dr. Amp or whatever. It was funny. The build up was good, and then we didn't need to see him multiple times, or Nadine multiple times, or Norma, or even Ed Hurley. To find out that they still hadn't gotten together. It's a lot of screen time could have been used towards the main case, which is kind of like I said, people have that nostalgia factor and they want the Twin Peaks quirkiness that they saw in the original show. But I would have rather them focused on what was happening with both the doppelganger and Cooper as Dougie, but getting to his regular Cooper self instead of Dougie. We got quite a few episodes and quite a bit of time devoted to Dougie Cooper, which that was almost like the newer-ish, I should say, kind of scenario, in I'm assuming it was like outside of Las Vegas or whatever. It was kind of like they took the Twin Peaks quirkiness of the small town and shifted it over to Vegas with some new characters. So that was good. It was like more appropriate that we can create that similar kind of weird, goofy environment with weird kind of quirky characters in a different place, and didn't really need to kind of go back to Twin Peaks, other than when we had some reason to, when it comes to kind of Hawk's mission to uncover some of the things that were, that the log lady had hinted to him about, and when Bobby came into the fold with his information that his father left, and that sort of thing. I would have rather them kind of focused on that more. And the Dougie Cooper stuff was okay. I mean, it was funny for a while, but I wish they'd, like I said, the minute Cooper comes to his, his old self, that's kind of the clock's ticking to the final showdown, because he's well aware of all that's taking place, and so you couldn't have him in episode 9, stick his the fork in the light socket and come to, because then where do you go from there? So yeah, I mean, it was almost like, you kind of just had to stick with it, but I would have rather they had just, focused, like I said, more time on the case, maybe even backstory, flashbacks. I would have loved to have seen, stuff, like I said, we had Gordon Cole talking about that incident with Philip Jeffries, when they came upon that woman that was her doppelganger, or Tulpa or whatever, was in the room with her and laying on the ground holding her stomach, and the other her was holding the gun. If they'd actually not just discussed those, but actually depicted those scenes, even if they'd had to use actors that played, the younger versions of Gordon Cole and Philip Jeffries and so forth, I would have preferred, more of that sort of thing, with little bit of the Dougie Cooper stuff kind of sprinkled in, because, like I said, there's so much lore and so much stuff that, that's taken place that we were not privy to, that it would have been nice for them to focus on that. And especially since one thing that kind of bugged me was they'd never mentioned Wyndham Earl at all. And I'm curious if Wyndham Earl was part of the Blue Rose Task Force, or whatever you want to call it, team in the beginning as well. Because obviously his interests in the Black Lodge didn't, it wasn't, very far after the, the incidents in New Mexico with the those kind of like frog insect monsters, and then the woodsman and so forth. So, and some of these Blue Rose cases that took place, it would have been nice to have mentioned Wyndham Earl's roles, and some of these things are, or done something along with that character, because I imagine he's still in the lodge as well, unless there's some place that they go to after another spiritual dimension or zone that after the lodge. But yeah, I mean, so overall, the material that we got was, worth it. And like I said, I'm glad that we have the 18 episodes, even if it wasn't perfect in my mind. So yeah, I mean, I'll definitely revisit it every once in a while. It didn't have the same impact that the original show had. As far as, after watching it, it wasn't like, a masterpiece or anything like that. I felt like at least the majority of the original run was, as far as how well it was put together. Mainly because I was expecting more reveals and more, explanations for a lot of the stuff that was going on, and the way in which they, kind of handled the Cooper coming out into the real world. I was almost kind of hoping that they would have kept him in the kind of the lodge, or that kind of other dimensional space, and almost had him trying to work his way, out into the world, and use that kind of, use Lynch's powers of, creating surreal environments and dream environments, to kind of, play around with the idea of Cooper trying to get out on his, own and break free from where he was at. But like I said, it is what it is. And, Dougie Cooper was amusing for a while, even though I, kind of got annoyed every once in a while with the screen time devoted to him. But yeah, so like I said, I don't want to make this video too long. Overall, season 3 was good. The ending wasn't terrible. The ending, dropped enough hints and to extrapolate some idea of what exactly took place and kind of Cooper's fate, and even though it always generates some extra questions, it was satisfying enough given given it's Lynch that's directing it. I mean, he could have gone and given us something much more off the wall and bizarre. So yeah, overall, I think season 3 was a success. There were some shortcomings, like I said. Most of it had to do with the amount of detail and where it was focused most. So yeah, but like I said, yeah, people want to see the old crowd, or the old cast, I should say, and what they were up to. So and try to kind of recapture some of the memories of the original run. So it is what it is. Like I said, hopefully I'll with my research, I'll maybe come to a greater appreciation of the story overall. But like I said, I'll definitely be buying the Blu-ray set, and hopefully there'll be some extras, and maybe there'll be some interviews and some commentary that either in the set, or from cast and crew or Lynch, sometime down the road, to maybe drop some hints and clues about things. And maybe some of the other fans out there will discover or put together some theories that explain some of the stuff that went on. So, but yeah, that's kind of the charm of the whole Twin Peaks thing, and the all the supernatural stuff. It's not, like I said, it's not spoon fed to you with any concrete absolute answers. So gives our imagination a chance to run wild. But yeah, I hope everybody else that watched this season 3 enjoyed it. I hope my analysis and my coverage of the season, of all the episodes from the pilot to episode 18, were enjoyable. And yep, I'm not sure if there'll be any more installments in the Twin Peaks universe, but you never know. Took 26 years to get this done. You never know. Maybe they'll supplement it. I'd love to see, like I said in the previous video, I'd love to see a season or something just dedicated to the FBI and Gordon Cole as a young man, and Phil Jeffries as a young man. When the Blue Rose group was formed initially, and maybe some of that, kind of more of like an X-Files detective type thing would be pretty cool. Some of the cases they worked on or investigated, that would definitely be something I would be interested in watching. So you never know. But yep, that's all for this one, folks. I'll keep you informed on my progress towards my kind of grand theory about the Twin Peaks universe and what everything means when I start working on it. But that'll be probably a little while down the road. Anyway, take it easy, everybody. I'll see you next time.